Live. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, back and back again, once again. Thank you, goodness gracious me, after a gorgeous day here in the city of Toronto. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. Unfortunately, my boys in behind lost the first leg of the Champions League yesterday, but not very despondent. I thought they gave all right performance. I think they could have done better if they weren't so profligate in front of goal. I think it could have been much better, but unfortunately wasn't the case. But there is still a second leg. I think we have the ability and agility and tranquility to get it done, and quite simply, I think we can. So I'm still full of heart, but a bit dismayed at the result yesterday. I thought we could get a draw. We didn't get a draw, so we move forward anyways, ladies and gentlemen, as I have the Houston Rockets, the Golden State Warriors in the background. I think Houston is still doing a number on Golden State, so I think they're going to take it back for a Game 7 here. A very contested series, a very good series, quite simply, and one of the best series of the first round. So again, it's going to capture my attention for the here and now. But again, and I think the Jays made a bit of a comeback in their game, and they are getting close to the summit there. But thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment. On the road to 1,000 subscribers. Sorry, not describers. Subscribers. Sponsored by Duntalk, DUNTALK.com. Like, subscribe, comment. On the road to 1,000 subscribers. Yes, indeed, we are back and back again. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much here for joining me here on Talk Live. So let's get into it. Let's get to this. I am ready to do this. Talk about Shannon Sharpe, ladies and gentlemen. Shannon, the one and only Shannon Sharpe, the host of Club Shay Shay, the host of Nightcap with Chad Ochocinco, and also one of the co-hosts of ESPN's First Take with Stephen A. Smith, one of the biggest sports celebrities out there in the world, quite simply. And he's built up quite a name for himself, especially with his Club Shay Shay show. Doing wonderful things in YouTube streets. We already featured him on a few occasions here on Talk Live, but he is here for the wrong reasons this time round. It seems that Shannon, who was rumored to be on the verge of receiving a $100 million contract for his Club Shay Shay show for his media company, which was, kudos to him. He's doing a wonderful job with that show, getting such great guests as Cat Williams, great guests as et al. And doing wonderful things in YouTube streets, and he's getting millions of views for his content. I think he's taking over for Vlad TV as the number one African diaspora interviewer in the world today, quite simply. And shout out to him, because I think if it's going to anyone, it should go to a black man, quite simply. And hey, so shout out to my man Shay Shay, Club Shay Shay. Doing wonderful things in YouTube streets, but he's in a bit of a bother. He's in a bit of a scandal. See, the thing about Shannon Sharpe is, as he would say himself, so eloquently himself, he doesn't want to date his age. He wants to date his wallet size. And his wallet size dictates that he could, basically go after any woman that he wants out there. Be they young, be they old, be they Beehive, be they British, and be they black, be they white, be they Jew, be they Gentile, be they Protestant, be they Catholic. Club Shay Shay's on the lookout for you, especially if you are the young, gorgeous type. And he has managed to hook up with a OnlyFans star, quite simply. And they've had they had consensual adult things going on, and as a result of that, there seems to be a bit of a difference of opinion on things, and it may cost Shannon Sharpe millions of dollars, quite simply. And so we're going to get into that tonight on Talk Live, and investigate the Shannon Sharpe shakedown or scandal tonight, because there are two different points of view here. One that says that Shannon Sharpe is though irresponsible, not at fault for what he's doing. He's doing what adults do, and he shouldn't be punished for such things. But again, Shannon Sharpe is a marked man. He is a man in demand. He's a man whose name is on the mass of many a great platform out there, including a Disney platform that is First Take. And for that, he's going to be seen as a target, and target found for one young lady out there who is an OnlyFans model. And you know what? There's no fool like an old fool. So we're going to get into this. Shannon Sharpe Shakedown or Scandal tonight on Talk Live. So let's get into it quite simply. We got a lot of things to discuss here, so let's get into the browser. Let's get into the show, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing we're going to do is get a recap of what we have thus far. And this thing has been evolving over the last week or so. I just come back from the gym. I'm going to go back to the gym. It's summertime now, so I got to get these get things right here. Okay. We got a little bit of brouhaha between Golden State and Houston, so I love to see it. Your things you love to see here on Talk Live. Hold on. We got a little pushing and shoving out there, but I think it's 10 bags of 10 paces. But anyways, let's get into this here on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Shannon Sharpe. We're going to go to microphone. Do subscribe to microphone, doing wonderful things to YouTube. So he just hit 1 million subscribers, microphone. I think he's Latin American. Man who talks about sports and scandal. And I look him up from time to time. He's done a wonderful review on Shannon Sharpe. Again, it's entitled "Shannon Sharpe Gets Even Worse." So let's get into this. If that's a precursor of things to come, let it be, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get into this here right on Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me.
I'm going to be open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right.
CM Punk does as much good to my reputation as Shannon Sharpe does to ESPN.
So a lot has happened since the last time we covered the Shannon Sharpe situation, and personally, I just want to warn you guys, it's kind of risky for me to be covering this topic. The last video we did on this topic was my first demonetized video, and I think over a year. So if you guys want to leave a like on this video to boost in the algorithm, I'd appreciate that. So the story goes like this. A woman by the name of Gabriela Zuniga is suing Shannon Sharpe for $50 million for alleged
Okay, so Gabriela Zuniga is indeed the lady in question, is indeed the OnlyFans model who had a torrid relationship with Shannon Sharpe, and who is now suing Shannon Sharpe for $50 million. For some, indiscretions, as they say, as we'll continue tonight. Let's go.
And the story is insane not only because of the allegations being brought forth against Shannon Sharpe and who Shannon Sharpe is as a person, but the reaction Shannon Sharpe has had and what this has led to, including Shannon Sharpe stepping down from ESPN. Now, the basis of these claims is this woman released a phone call between her and Shannon Sharpe that made Shannon Sharpe seem really, really aggressive and even abusive.
If you said that one more time, I'm going to choke the shit when I see you.
Well, I don't want to be choked.
Yes, you do. I don't think you have a choice in the matter.
Now, Shannon Sharpe's response to this would be this video.
This is a shakedown. I'm going to be open, transparent, and defend myself because this isn't right. This is all being orchestrated by Tony Busby, who has targeted Jay-Z. Tony Busby targets black men, and I believe he's going to release a 30-second clip of a sex tape that tries to make me look guilty and play into every stereotype you could possibly imagine.
But that's not the only thing Shannon...
So here's the thing about it, ladies and gentlemen. Shannon was dating and having relations, if you know what I mean, with this lady, Gabrielle Zuniga, 19 at the time year old lady, and quite simply, it was going fine until early 2025 when she decided to turn the tables, realizing that Shannon Sharpe was due to a new contract, and you heard the I think this is a setup. I think this is a total setup. In my heart of hearts, at this time, in that she saw money, she saw that she heard the rumors that, or she would have got wind of Shannon Sharpe having a new contract, and she made being a jump off, and so she said, you know what, if this thing is about to be announced, I am going to take matters in my own hands and try to take some of that money. So instead of and this is what separates this from being a serious crime to being, a shakedown, quite simply, is the fact that this woman could have gone to the criminal court, but no, she didn't choose to do so. She chose to take this to a civil matter, make this a civil matter, and make this for money, because that's all she wanted. I think all she wanted really was to obtain a few dollars at this time. and pay and at the end of the day pay for her time by, well, again, getting some of the largesse from the aforementioned Shannon Sharpe, who, for lack of a better word, was going to get paid. He was going to get seriously paid, and she wanted in on that for just a few, nights of, of romps in the sheets. And you'll hear from different text messages as to how lured how lured things were, and how, quite simply, she was not innocent in this matter. She was not a babe in the woods, quite simply. Let's continue.
Sharpe would do, he would also release text messages that he had with this woman, and I can't believe that his PR team was cool with him doing this, because considering who Shannon Sharpe is, one of the top 3 sports analysts in America, it just seems bizarre that he would want this out there. And Shannon Sharpe released these text messages in hopes that they would clear his name, but sadly, it just made him seem more naive than anything else, because you really could see what the woman's motives were. Recently, it's come out that this woman is actually an OnlyFans model, so she pretty much sells her body online for money. And in these text messages, you could tell what she really is after in each and every text message, such as you have to pay $25K for each cheek. But that's not it. I want you to put that baby gravy in me. Then I can do whatever I want to me. I want you to blank and then marry me. That's my daddy. I want you to put a big black baby in me. And probably my favorite one of all, you better crave it because you're going to be stuck with it for life after you put a big black baby in me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as Shannon Sharpe looks at you on the screen there on YouTube, holding his 1 million subscriber YouTube plaque, quite simply, you know what she was going after. She was playing this from the start. She wanted Shannon to be her forever donor, sperm, money, or otherwise. She wanted to be Shannon's wife. She wanted to be Shannon's lady, because she knew Shannon was going to get paid. She knew Shannon was going to get paid for a while. And quite simply, she was in for a check. That's why I call this a shakedown. That's why I seriously call this a shakedown, because at the end of the day, when you ask for $25K per cheek, when you ask to put baby batter in you and make a black baby, when you ask, as you can see here, you better crave it because you're going to be stuck with it for life after you put a big black baby in me. Yeah, it sounds a bit, it has certain racial undertones involved with it here, quite simply. But again, so that's why I call this a real shakedown, because I think she realized that Shannon was at the end of his tether with regards to Gabriel Zuniga, and quite simply wanted to end the relationship. And so she said, you know what, I'm going to turn this around and really get paid, and quite simply, I'm going to go after him for at least part, if not all, of Shannon's largesse that he was about to win through a new contract for his podcast series and for his production company. So, yeah, it's a bit of a. It's a bit of it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, quite simply, but this is how things run in today's day and age. If you're a man of means, if you're a man of power, if you're a man of confidence, intelligence, and service, if you're a man who, leads from the front, and, a lady's going to see you as targets. And all they need to do is throw a little behind at you and try to catch you in a lie, try to catch you in a compromising position, and try to take money from you. Because, again, a lot of these ladies don't want to work hard for their money. They just want to get paid for their God-given talents, if you know what I mean. Let's continue.
And the interesting part about this is in the very next paragraph of this statement, Shannon Sharpe says that these messages are just a sampling of a broader pattern of graphic communications initiated by Ms. Zuniga. The evidence paints a clear picture. This was a consensual adult relationship that included role-playing, language, and fantasy scenarios explicitly requested by Ms. Zuniga. It's just so funny.
Well, again, that's from Shannon's lawyer. And quite simply, I think, nothing more needs to be said in this. Yes, I think this relationship was indeed consensual. and between Shannon and Mr. Zuniga. But due to the fact that Ms. Zuniga would have a short shelf life, she decided, you know what, I'm gonna clean up in this situation because nothing's guaranteed. So not only is she winning on this end, but you'll see how she's winning on another end in due course as we move on down the line here in this show. But as you can, that's from Shannon Sharpe's lawyer in response to the lawsuit launched by Tony Busby and specifically Gabriel Zuniga. Let's go.
Language and fantasy scenarios explicitly requested by Ms. Zuniga. It's just so funny that he's saying that this included role-playing, sexual language, and fantasy scenarios. No, brother, there's 4 different ways that she's telling you she could earn a bag out of you. You either give her money for each cheek, you put that baby gravy in her, you marry her, you put a baby in her. That's 4 different ways she can get a bag out of you. It just goes to show how naive Shannon Sharpe was, because if you want to engage in this type of off-the-court activity, then be my guest. It's not really my business, but you should be careful, especially when you understand what this woman's motives truly are. And things will get even worse. I mean, it would eventually be leaked out that Shannon Sharpe offered $10 million to close out the case before it went public, which now I'm even more shocked that this woman is refusing $10 million and opted to sue Shannon Sharpe instead. And the reaction has just been so insane. And some of the old clips of Shannon Sharpe's podcasts are now circulating online.
Everybody always talk about date.
Okay, so again, before we get into these different unceremonious Shannon Sharpe motives, Shannon Sharpe moments. Shout out to Golden Arm. I hope all is well, my friend. Shannon, yeah, he put himself in this position. I think he realized. I don't think he realized the ramifications of what he had done. I think he was a target. He was clearly seen as a lick. As the kids say, by for her, and not only for her, but for her OnlyFans brand. Because remember, this is an OnlyFans model, ladies and gentlemen. So and her OnlyFans page is open. You heard me. Her OnlyFans page is open right now. So she's not only getting, she's trying to get money on the front end for her OnlyFans page, but on the back end in terms of the lawsuit. Now, what doesn't paint Shannon Sharpe in a good light is the fact that he offered this lady $10 million to keep this quiet. He offered this lady $10 million to keep this quiet. And quite simply, not a bad deal, to be fair. Because Shannon was, if the deal went well, going to make $100 million from his Club Shay show and his production company for Nightcap and for Club Shay. But not only that, he was still getting paid from ESPN, so he's still getting paid from Disney. So he was a multi-millionaire. So $10 million off the top of this lady wasn't anything, but she wanted more. And clearly, she was coached by counsel to ask for more. So, as I was saying, there's no fool like an old fool. So, Shannon should have known better. Should have known that these young ladies weren't, the young lady that she was involved with was in it for money. Should have paid her for her services and quite simply let her go. But, again, he let himself into a world of hurt here, and quite simply, he's got a lot of bother on his case right now. But again, do remember, Shannon Sharpe is still working today. Because again, he still has his production company, he still has his shows, Nightcap and Club Shay, and they are still going strong. Because again, those are his entities. Only he can shut them down. And he doesn't feel he's wrong. He feels he's vindicated. So therefore, the show goes on those 2 shows. And you know what? That shows you the power of YouTube and the power of Shannon Sharpe in that he doesn't necessarily need ESPN/Disney's money to make a living. Because again, he was about to make $100 million. He's still making money hand over fist right now. and he can afford to give Gabrielle Zuniga a cut of his winnings just to keep her quiet. But again, she wanted the big bag, and she wanted to take half, which I sincerely don't think that's going to happen. But anyways, we'll let this run and let this continue. But again, Shannon, all this could have been avoided. Well, through the oldest profession in the world, quite simply. So let's continue.
Circulating online.
Everybody always talk about date your age. Well, I want to date my wage. I'm finna shut all this ish down tonight. I want to date my wage.
Bang. And you know what? So he should be. He wants to date his wage, but being Shannon Sharpe, to date his wage is very difficult. Extremely difficult with a man of this sort of presence, this sort of power, this sort of influence, this sort of status, this sort of money. He'll always be seen as a target, especially by those who are younger than him. I think if he got a lady in her 30s, knowing that she doesn't have much time, I think he would have had more time with her. But he likes them young, quite simply. And again, as I've stated here on Talk Live, most men love ladies within the ages of 19 to 24. Those are the most attractive ladies to the male gaze. And this girl was 19 going on 20. So right up his street, right up his alley. And you know what? He's welcome to it. But again, he had to protect himself. And he didn't protect himself at this time. But how can you when undergoing this sort of thing? But again, you know, he's got to realize 19, 20-year-old, there's not much in common with these two at any sort of time. Let's continue.
Where y'all at?
I mean, he even had Cat Williams trying to warn him about this type of activity.
Want to get with a white woman because I was scared, not because I didn't like white women. I think white women are as great as any other women. I have a reason to be scared. They could take your down in 2 weekends.
Now, Shannon Sharpe is trying to...
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? How prophetic is this man right here? I mean, how prophetic is Cat Williams? He said all, and I'm paraphrasing here, all big dick deviants will be brought to bear in 2025. And that was back in 2024. And not only have we seen the downfalls of Diddy, the potential downfalls of Jay-Z, and many others in Hollywood, but now we see the downfall of Shannon Sharpe himself. And he did indeed warn him to watch out with the white ladies, watch out with the snow bunnies, because again, they don't necessarily see you. They're not. I mean, many are enraptured with you, but many aren't, and many just see a checkbook, and many just see a come up, and many just see a bag, and many just see a big black baby inside of them. And Lana BK says herself, he said, all the truth will be revealed. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. Shannon Sharpe was... this man is so prophetic. He is absolutely prophetic. He knew that the day would come that all these big dick deviants would be brought to bear. And lo and behold, here we are, including the host of the show himself, the man who brought him the most... the man who gained from, I would say, one of the greatest interviews in YouTube history. And Shannon Sharpe is feeling the sharp end of the sword here, and it cannot be denied that he did not cover his tracks well enough, nor understand that. Listen, this lady was here for your money, quite simply. She was an OnlyFans girl. Question. And again, that's what led to this, I say, shakedown. But we move forward. But do you think Lana BK also writes? Do you think the OF lady coming for a payday was a strategic plan by Tony Busby? I would say yes. I think Tony Busby saw an opportunity here, and he went in guns blazing. I mean, he went after Jay-Z. He went after Diddy. He's gone after Deshaun Watson from the Cleveland Browns, the quarterback. He has lawsuits against each one of these gentlemen, and they happen to be black male athletes. And I think absolutely, I think this man targets them because he realizes that some of them have more money than sense, and it makes for easy paydays. Number one for him, and number two, it brings notoriety to his firm. He has a firm in Houston, if you did not know. And yeah, I think he smelled a rat right here. He said, you know what? I think that Gabriella Zuniga sought out Tony Busby because of the Diddy trial, sought out, and the Jay-Z suit, which has since been withdrawn, and now he's being sued for defamation, quite simply, which is quite fitting indeed. But yeah, absolutely. In answer to your question, Lana, indeed, it was a strategic plan for it was a strategic plan by Tony Busby for a big payday. Absolutely. But let's continue with this.
Down in 2 weekends.
Now, Shannon Sharpe is trying to tell us that the timing of this lawsuit is very interesting. After all, he's very close to agreeing to a $100 million deal for his online shows now that his contract with Colin Cowherd's network is expiring. So the timing is definitely peculiar, but it really doesn't matter. Shannon Sharpe, once again, is one of the best personalities in sports right now. I mean, in my opinion, you have Stephen A. Smith, Pat McAfee, and Shannon Sharpe in whatever order you want to say. The man knows how to generate viral moments seemingly out of nowhere, most recently going viral for this.
OKC, KFC, UFC. Look at the five. SGA, PGA, USA. Look at the five.
But you would think he'd be a little bit more careful about the way he conducts himself and who is potentially after him for a payday, which could very well be the case here. And it seems like he didn't do his job to protect himself, and things just got way worse. Because originally this was just something that was being memed between all of social media, including this insane meme of a Shannon Sharpe action figure. But now some stuff has been released that has resulted in Shannon Sharpe stepping down from ESPN, including a brand new phone call that doesn't make Shannon Sharpe look the greatest, I must admit.
Well, I'm not really interested in getting choked, so I guess we're going.
I might choke you in public. Big black guy chokes small white woman.
It's not a good look, Shannon.
Not a good look. You did what you did to me.
Now, at the same time,
now again, clear setup. When things are running right and things are running good and you're engaging in role play, because that's exactly what that was. She turned the tables and said, you know what? Yeah, that's not a good look, Shannon. I don't know about that, Shannon. It appears, you can see it has setup written all over it. And Shannon fell right into the trap. Right into the trap. No doubt about that. He fell straight in, face first. And, he never realized that this woman was in it for ulterior motives. There was no romantic relationship here. There was an agreement, a consensual agreement happening, but I think she wanted to extend that towards Shannon Sharpe's largesse, simply because things took a turn, because I'm sure they would have engaged in role play and sexual activity for a while, but unfortunately, she saw the future. She saw his paycheck and said, I'd rather that than you, which is a shame. But that's exactly what you get with these younger ladies, especially OnlyFans models who have been reduced to confidence women. Quite simply, they are reduced to confidence women. Let's continue.
And there's recent leaked messages that kind of paint a different picture. From Gabby, I cried when you left because I begged you to put protection on and not put it in my butt, and you didn't listen. I don't care what our history is. No means no, Shannon. From Gabby, I don't know how to process this. From Shannon, can I call you later? And then the other text messages kind of make it seem like this was consensual and Shannon is actually being baited here, such as I want to be abused. I'm not going to read the rest of this, but you get the point. There's more text messages that I can show you on the screen if if you guys want to read, you guys could go ahead and read it for yourselves, including her telling Shannon that she wants to be tied up. But I have to admit, in terms of who's winning this situation, I have to say that this adult star is. Photographs and videos have been going viral of her online, so at the very minimum, people are going to find out who she is and probably pay her for her online content, so that's a huge victory for her. We're not going to show it on this channel. At the same exact time, Shannon Sharpe's situation is so bad that now he needs to step down from ESPN during a pretty pivotal time for sports. I mean, it's the NBA playoffs right now. That's going to go into the NBA offseason. The man is going viral for this.
4 mustard seed, poppy seed, Lakers in 5.
But at the same time, Shannon Sharpe now said that he is stepping down. So according to Shannon Sharpe himself, my statement is found here and this is the truth. The relationship in question was 100% consensual. At this juncture, I'm electing to step aside temporarily from my ESPN duties. I'll be devoting this time to my family and responding and dealing with these false and disruptive allegations set against me. I plan to return to ESPN at the start of the NFL preseason. I sincerely appreciate the overwhelming and ongoing support I have received from my family, fans, friends, and colleagues, Shannon Sharpe.
So, again, Shannon Sharpe wishes to come back before during the NFL preseason, into the NFL season, because that's, what mainly Shannon Sharpe's there for. That's his expertise. That's his lane, which is, listen, he's a Hall of Fame NFL tight end, one of the greatest NFL tight ends of all time. And I'm sorry I didn't introduce him as such, but such is his success as, post-retirement from the NFL, that his previous life in the NFL pales in comparison, quite simply, and such is his success, which he should be commended. I mean, Shannon is a bigger entity now than he ever was in the NFL. Quite simply, that's how big Shannon Sharpe is. That's how big of an entity he is, thanks to his time on Fox with Undisputed, thanks to his time now with ESPN on First Take, and thanks to his dual platforms of Club Shay Shay and Nightcap. He is one of the biggest stars in sports, quite simply, and that cannot be denied. However, he's again missing out on huge opportunities to grow his career. Because I listen, if he stays on First Take, if this controversy doesn't come up, yes, he's earning that $100 million without question. That goes without saying. $100 million in his pocket, no questions asked. And also add to the fact that, his time on ESPN, he's one of the biggest personalities on ESPN. As you can say, the top three being Stephen A. Smith, Dan Carnegie, the other guy, the white dude, and also, sorry, his name escapes me, which is funny enough. And Shannon Sharpe. He's one of the top three sports commentators, sports personalities in the world. In the world right now, I'd say. Absolutely. I would say in the world. Absolutely. And that cannot be denied. So, he's missing out on big opportunities, but it's not as if he's not earning money himself. He still has his Club Shay Shay. He still has his nightcap, and he's still earning money. And quite simply, I think that $100 million contract is in the books. And again, even if, and it's a shame that he couldn't have this under wraps, but it's hope that this thing will come to an end by the end of the, and he'll be back on ESPN by the start of the football season, which is in September. So he has a bit of time to get this all wrapped up. But I'll let you know what I think the result of this will be at the end of the day. But but again, it's I think it's inevitable what will happen. Quite simply, let's continue.
If Shannon Sharpe is right, even if the relationship was 100% consensual, even if this is just a scheme to blackmail him out of millions of dollars, you need to be smart with who you try to get involved with. And in this particular case, Shannon Sharpe wasn't smart, and as a result, he's paying the ultimate price. And that is if we're assuming that he did nothing wrong, which at the same time, maybe this woman is right. These are all allegations at the end of the day. I'm just going based off of what's out there. It obviously is painting a picture that Shannon Sharpe is being set up, but at the end of the day, he's the one that put himself in this situation. I mean, the signs are all there. It's a woman that sells her body. It's a woman that told you 4 different ways that she could get a bag out of you. And now it's a woman that is literally trying to get a bag out of you in a different way, a 5th way, by suing you. And the fact that you just couldn't see these signs and you couldn't tell from the very beginning just goes to show that you're just very naive. And now he's paying the ultimate price. And that is if we're assuming that he did nothing wrong here. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this situation. I personally thought it was crazy. It warranted an update, even if it got demonetized. If you want more of an intro to the story, I'll leave a link to it in the end.
Out there. Thank you very much to Microphone. He did a very nice synopsis of where we are too right now. I mean, the story's still out there, and a lot of, there's still a lot of negotiations, a lot of posturing by the lawyers. But let's get into the law, quite simply. Let's get into the law. Before we get into Stephen A. Smith, let's get into the law, the legal part of this argument here. So we're going into sidebar, law and crime sidebar with Jesse Weber. Jesse Weber's doing he's doing gangbuster business. He's up to 6 million subscribers, doing serious numbers on these YouTube streets, covering a lot of these Hollywood scandals, including the Diddy trial and now the Shannon Sharpe and the Shannon Sharpe review we have here. Because again, sex scandal, and the law run hand in hand. Let's see if we have any other comments here from the show. We're good to go. Yep, we're good. But let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. From Law and Crime. Shannon Sharpe bombshell, rape allegations, everything we know till now. And this was happened just a day ago, so we're getting an update on things. So we're going to go with the review here on Talk Live. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen, from Law and Crime with Jesse Weber.
For you. From more responses, both from his attorney, his former co-host, to another former NFL player, to Sharpe making a surprise visit. A lot to talk about as the former NFL star and commentator faces serious allegations of rape and sexual assault that have led to his departure at ESPN. This time, we bring on sports attorney Dan Lust to break it all down. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. NFL Hall of Famer, podcaster, sports analyst Shannon Sharpe has been in the news quite a bit this last week, and as updates come in, we have been covering it here too on Sidebar. Now, we know that a Nevada woman filed a $50 million lawsuit against him on April 20th, claiming that he raped her twice in October of 2024 and once in January of 2025. And the sexual assault allegations are incredibly disturbing, that this purportedly happened while she was crying and begging for him to stop. This unidentified Jane Doe also claims that he recorded her without her consent, that he shared those videos with others, that he even threatened her. And I'm going to get into a new response that we haven't even talked about yet in just a minute, but it wasn't just the lawsuit that was shocking. No, it was also the events that transpired afterwards. Because what happens? Sharpe released a statement on his Instagram.
To my family, friends, supporters, and colleagues, I want to speak to you directly and from the heart. This is a shakedown.
And he claims that Jane Doe's attorney, Tony Buzbee, is targeting black men because we know that Tony Buzbee previously sued Sean Combs, Jay-Z, Deshaun Watson, claims that he believes that her side is going to release a 30-second clip of a sex tape, and apparently he encouraged them, just release the whole thing, provide the whole context. Apparently, he revealed her name and also the name that she goes by when she purportedly uses or presents on OnlyFans. And overall, he and his team have been adamant that everything that happened between the two of them was consensual. And to prove that, his side released a plethora of text messages seemingly between Sharpe and this Jane Doe. For example, as reported by TMZ, there's one apparent message from October 2023 where Jane Doe seemingly messages Sharpe, "I want you to put a dog collar around my neck and choke me with it while you're bleeping me." Okay, you fill in the blank. The NY Post reporting on other...
Now remember, as a CYA to Law and Crime, They consider her still Jane Doe, even though it's been revealed for all to see that it's Gabrielle Zuniga. Everybody knows that she's an OnlyFans model. Everybody knows her name's in the news. They still call her Jane Doe. So Jane Doe is Gabrielle Zuniga, for just to let you know. There's not another lady involved in this action. All right? Just to let you know. Let's continue.
Other messages allegedly from Jane Doe, like, tie me up and do bad things to me. Now, Busby responded and said that these messages are from before the alleged assaults. And really, a woman can say yes 99 times, but that one time she says no, that's all that matters. And
now remember, that is the slippery slope. That is indeed what sticks in your craw, quite simply. That just because you've engaged in sexual relations, have a consensual sexual relationship for all this time, the minute she says no is the minute you get a $50 million lawsuit, which is it's unfathomable to me. It's just bonkers that a woman who's gone ahead with everything consensual with regards to their relationship up until that time, the minute she says no, then she deserves $50 million, which is stunning. It's a stunning revelation, and quite simply unworthy of any sort of action here. But remember, and this will come up later in this conversation, $10 million was offered by Shannon to keep this quiet. So you knew that he did not want the heat, he did not want the smoke, and he wanted this to be swept under the rug and kept quiet. So, despite the fact that everything was consensual, he knew that who his paymasters were at the end of the day in one capacity, and that was ESPN. So he knew he did not want this hitting the front pages anywhere in the world at any time, because he knew that Disney was a company of who was very woke, very pristine, very blue. Even though white collar, it does not like any sort of controversies of this nature happening. So we are left with with Shannon Sharpe taking the steps of paying Gabrielle Zuniga allegedly $10 million to keep this quiet. But she saw a star in her eyes. I think she was convinced by counsel, Mr. Busby, that more could be brought out from these proceedings, and here we are. Let's continue.
And in that vein, by the way, an audio clip was released by Tony Busby, or seemingly by him and his side, capturing the voice of a woman whom attorneys identify as the woman suing Shannon Sharpe, telling him not to manipulate her. And then you hear a man's voice, resembling Shannon Sharpe's, can be heard saying, if you say that word one more time, I'm gonna bleep and choke the bleep out of you when I see you. And the woman, allegedly Jane Doe in this case, then can be heard saying she does not want that, while the voice resembling Shannon Sharpe responds, yes, you do. I don't think you have a choice in the matter. Then Shannon Sharpe, and we talked about this on a previous sidebar, decided to temporarily step away from his job at ESPN's First Take. And Sharpe's statement that was posted to his Instagram account on April 24th says in part, quote, the relationship in question was 100% consensual. At this juncture, I am electing to step aside temporarily from my ESPN duties. I will be devoting this time to my family and responding and dealing with false and disruptive allegations against me. I plan to return to ESPN at the start of the NFL preseason. A lot of money at stake in this case. And by the way, talking money, actually,
okay, let's move on.
Ocho Cinco Johnson, although they didn't talk anything about the allegations, it was interesting he made that appearance. Now, we have some more statements and responses that we haven't gotten into previously on other episodes of Sidebar, but we're going to get into now. But before we do that, I want to bring on Dan Lust, sports attorney, host of the Conduct Detrimental podcast, and professor at New York Law School. Dan, so good to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Jesse, good to see you as well. The story, as you would expect, is front page news in our world. So certainly happy to break it down with you.
I know. When it broke, we wanted you on immediately. We haven't talked about it. Your overall thoughts on everything that I laid out so far, and we'll get into more specifics. I know we're going to get into a little bit about what Stephen A. Smith had to say, because we presented a little bit of his response in our last episode, but he has a much fuller response that we'll get into. So putting Stephen A.
Okay, let's get into Stephen A. Smith's comments here, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to do a little audible here. I have queued up Stephen A. Smith here on his reaction to the Shannon Sharpe controversy. Just the last bit of it. Just the last bit of his commentary, because I think that's the more poignant piece of the of this video launched by Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith doing wonderful things on YouTube. I don't know if he's hit 1 million subscribers. He's hit 1 million subscribers. He's hit 1,000,002 subscribers now after he's launched this about just over a year ago. So shout out to Stephen A. Smith. I think again, as stated, one of the biggest sports personalities in American sports, if not world sports right now, and again, the executive producer of First Take, and the man who brought on Shannon Sharpe as a co-host just over a year ago. So again, here is Shannon Sharpe. Here is Stephen A. Smith commenting on the controversy himself. Let's continue.
I know, and I can tell you all that I spoke to Shannon, not in details, but I spoke to him, and he emphatically proclaims his innocence. According to Mr. Busby, his client emphatically proclaims his guilt. So where does that leave us? I'd love to tell you that I know the answer to that question, but I don't. I am the executive producer of First Take on ESPN. I recruited Shannon. I went and got him and brought him to ESPN. But I'm not the boss. Those are other folks. There are layers to this, and there are certain layers even I am not on. I can tell you, I also spoke to co-chairman of Disney, the boss, Jimmy Pitaro, who made it very, very clear we are taking this matter very seriously, and we are looking into this very, very closely. And once we gather as many facts as we possibly can, we will go from there. And that is all he said. And I can mention his name because I received his permission to say that.
So, again, as you heard from Stephen A. Smith himself, Disney, the company that runs that is basically is in ownership of ESPN as an entity. They've said that they are this allegation is under investigation by ESPN, and until that time, I think that behind the scenes asked Shannon Sharpe to step down until a further investigation was found, and he complied. You know what, and so for Shannon to take the first step, I don't think he would have taken the first step. I think ESPN did that themselves until these allegations, until this action is over. I think it behooved ESPN to take this action and ask Shannon Sharpe not necessarily to resign, but to take a leave of absence until this action has been seen to its end. And that's, I think, what would happen in most cases, in most situations. I think he would still, I think his contract would be honored. However, he would not be an on-camera personality on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. So, as with any corporation, as with any woke corporation, they're going to take these things very seriously, and they're going to let the legal action play out to its end until that time, or unless there's a settlement and Shannon Sharpe can be returned back on air. Let's continue.
I don't know what that means. In my perfect world, this equates to Jay-Z, where the case ultimately dropped and Shannon is allowed to continue on First Take and continue to thrive and shine. And not just that, and have an illustrious career in the podcast stratosphere, doing Nightcap with Chad Ochocinco, doing Club Shay Shay, and ultimately gets this $100 million deal that he was all over the news about to sign just a couple of days before this report came out. In my perfect world, he moves on. And somehow, some way, we find this all to be false. But it doesn't seem like that's the way things are about to go down, considering who Mr. Busby is and how emphatic his client is proclaiming that she is right and she's telling the truth. I don't know where this is going to go. I can't speak to anything else. I don't know who Shannon Sharpe's legal team is and what they're suggesting. I imagine that everything that has transpired has been at the behest of his lawyers, not just himself. I can tell you again that when I spoke to him, he is emphatic in stating his innocence, that this is a shakedown, to use his words. How wise is it to use those kind of words when a civil matter of this nature is out there? When you have a podcast and you have advertisers and sponsors and you work for ESPN and they have advertising sponsors, I don't know. What can we say if any of us were in that position and we felt or were proclaiming we were innocent? I don't know. And I'm not about to pretend. I just wanted to make sure that I echoed to all of you that the only reason I spoke on this issue is because he works with me 2 days a week. He's on national television. He was on national television with me today. He was on national television with me yesterday when the story came out Sunday night. I didn't know anything about it until we got on the air. But he was on air. And if you know him in part because of all the work that he's doing with me and what he's doing in this industry, I know everybody's been waiting, like, Stephen A., what you got to say about this? I got to say what I just told you. I don't know what's happened. I know I got love for the brother. I know that I'm wishing that he's innocent and all of this stuff goes away and he can continue to thrive with me on ESPN and thrive in his own platforms that he worked so diligently over the years to build. But anything else would be entirely irresponsible for me to speak on. And
you know what? It's true. I totally agree with the statement by Stephen A. Smith. I think it would be improper for him to speculate, especially with his position on First Take and with the media. I think he's acting within his with good judgment here. He's saying, you know what? I can't say anything about the matter. And he wishes him well, and he sees Shannon Sharpe as a friend and hopes that this matter goes away, as did the Jay-Z action did. And I don't see him as being a big fan of Tony Busby in and of itself. But you know what? He has people he has to answer to, and he has to be responsible as a journalist and as a media personality. And knowing the law, he understands that, you know what, it's going to play out in the courts, and all he could say is he wishes well for Shannon Sharpe. And you know what? That's all you can really say in the matter. But I heard all these things about people, Shannon Sharpe, Stephen A. Smith throwing Shannon Sharpe under the bus. He can't. Well, listen, he's not throwing him under the bus at all. He's just answering questions. He is issuing support for Shannon Sharpe, and quite simply, that's all he can say. I support him, but he doesn't want to, tamper with the action in the courts, and and I don't think he wants to participate in anything really coming to that, because again, this doesn't have anything to do with him, and he doesn't want to be dragged into this action. Number one, which is fair, but you know what? He doesn't have a say in the matter. He doesn't have a dog in the fight, and so for that, he wants to abstain. He gives all the support to Shannon Sharpe, but at the end of the day, he's going to await a decision, and once that happens, then he hopes he can reunite with his on-air friend and personality. Let's continue.
I can't do that. Yes, I own this. This is my platform. But I also have a day job, and I also understand what lawyers, what HR, and all of those other things entail. What I said is all I can say. And in all honesty, at this moment, it is all I know. I have no idea what direction ESPN and Walt Disney will go in when it comes to this matter. All I do know is it won't be me making a decision. It'll be others upstairs. In the end, all of us have someone to answer to. No matter how maverick we try to be, and we own our own business, and we're our sole proprietors, like I am on this platform and stuff like that. There are advertisers, there are sponsors, there are people you do business with, there are partners, and there are bosses. That's the situation, unfortunately, that Shannon Sharpe finds himself in at this particular moment in time. I sincerely wish him the best. I got love for him. And I hope all of this is just a sad ordeal that goes away because there was no truth to it. But I don't know. Neither do you or the rest of us. And only time will tell.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. And only time will tell. And again, Stephen A. has given Shannon Sharpe his full support, but he understands that he has to step aside and let the legal action play out. But let's get back to law and crime here, and the discussion between Jesse Weber and his guest. Let's continue.
Hey, Smith, to the side. Just your overall thoughts on what you're seeing here.
Yeah, so this is a dynamic story involving a sports media personality, and we're seeing the case litigated through the media. So every day we have something new, and as I think you and I kind of exchanged some thoughts briefly last week, this was an evolving story, and I figured there would be an update this week, and obviously it's still somewhat unfolding. But, in big picture, we have Tony Busby, who is no stranger to high-profile cases involving, people in the sports and entertainment realm. And then we have, I guess, a character from the past, Lonnie Davis, the attorney for Shannon Sharpe. So anytime you see kind of two high-profile lawyers on either side, I start kind of dissecting the...
So again, this is Shannon Sharpe's lawyer here, Lonnie Davis, one of the better litigation attorneys in the United States. Again, he would get a high-profile lawyer to handle his matter, and so said, so done. So again, this should be a rocking and rolling matter indeed. Let's continue.
The lawyer beats in the conversation. So a lot to unpack, and certainly no shortage of legal tactics in the media to kind of look at here.
I said this before, I'll say it again. It feels like the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni strategy. Litigate this in the media, right? Especially when you have a high-profile individual like this, because you're not only battling this in the court of law, you're battling this in the court of public opinion. I'm not saying you should do this, but what I think is we're seeing is if you put enough out there, it could create a situation where Jane Doe might drop her suit. If people start siding with Shannon Sharpe, if he presents text messages, it's getting quite ugly before there's some sort of protective order or gag order put in place by the court. What do you make of this strategy to litigate this for everyone to see?
This is the weird part, and I'll also add to that. Like, there's a little bit coming from here, a little bit coming from here, and if you kind of create a circus about a story, maybe it loses its underlying heart and the sensitivity of the nature of the allegation. So I think that's a little bit what's going on from a substantive perspective. And I know you alluded to it, right? There is I think it's a minute-ish clip, purportedly a phone call between Shannon Sharpe and his accuser, and there are, we'll say, and this is kind of the first domino, right? It's not a graphic video in terms of, it's not a video, it's actually just a phone call, and we're talking about some things. Put it this way, and I want to make this kind of step in it, but you can say things on a phone call that will be two things that two adults are legally allowed to consent to with one another, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That initial phone call that went out, yes, it was somewhat graphic in its nature, but it's nothing really
Okay, before we go on to describe those text messages and litigating in court, we're going to be back for a second hour here on Talk Live, so stay with us here on IG. So come on back. We're going to be continuing on YouTube. Stay tuned. And thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Let's get into this here, ladies and gentlemen, into hour 2 of Talk Live as we continue this discussion on Shannon Sharpe and the Shannon Sharpe Shakedown or scandal. Back live here on Talk Live on IG and YouTube. We have in the background the Clippers v. the Minnesota Timberwolves, a very, very good series indeed. I think that's going to go down to a 6 or 7 game series. It's a lot of to and fro, and here we go. I think Timberwolves are leading 3-1 at the moment, but I think this will go to a game 6. I really do. But let's see what happens tonight. Although, again, the Timberwolves have a pretty good lead. Well, they have a lead by 6-7. So I think it's 8 points. So we'll let it run and let that ride. But again, back to the discussion between Jesse Weber and his guest here on Talk Live through their Law and Crime platform and this video on Shannon Sharpe. Let's continue.
Criminal that occurred on that phone call. So the next step that Shannon Sharpe's side took was basically to release, I think, a much more extensive array of text messages that also carried within the same theme of graphic messaging. You know, again, maybe not necessarily illegal, but things that consenting adults could consent to, right? There's no issue with this. You and I have talked on a previous episode about Trevor Bauer and those allegations with where someone was allegedly rendered unconscious, where legally you're not allowed to consent to that type of an act. So you asked me what my thoughts were on the strategy of litigating this. I don't really quite understand the strategic nature of releasing more things. Like Tony Busby's side allegedly released this a minute audio clip. The text messages are more of the same, none of which are criminal, but we understand, right? I think as a viewing public, we can understand there is some consent that happened to this, but you're not really litigating the case in the media, so to speak, by offering text messages that don't show consent of the underlying act of sexual assault that's here. So yes, it's just, to me, that move was really just muddying the waters, and we can certainly get into what I view as other confusing signals. We'll put it that way.
They're saying it was
all. Again, I think this shows a pattern. Before we get into this, before I get to that point, yes, indeed, I think both counsels here are right in the sense that this is before we argue before this action is argued in court, you have to fight with the court of public opinion. I think that that is more important now more than ever in today's society. That they win hearts and minds outside of the matter, and so there's always a jostling between the two litigants here, and really it's trying to get people on board with their allegations and their actions, and it is you have to win in these days in these sort of litigated matters. You have to start winning hearts and minds in these actions. But again, I think this is showing a pattern. This is a big pattern. We've covered this on Talk Live on many an occasion in which you see these sports stars like Trevor Bauer, like Shannon Sharpe, like Deshaun Watson. You have these sports stars, and more often than not, they're not seen as sports stars themselves. They're seen as targets by the fair sex, in that they can get a bag from these gentlemen because they if there is no romantic interest involved, because and it is so it is so fraught with danger for a lot of these athletes these days because they're seen as targets, they're seen as marks, they're seen as licks, quite simply. And this is going to continue to happen as long as these large contracts are put out there, as long as these, women see these men as instant paydays where they don't have to work anymore. You have to cover your bases so very seriously as an athlete, as an athlete these days, because that you cannot hide from the fact that shakedowns are going to come sooner or later, and it behooves you to make sure that whoever you are with, you can totally trust. But being with an OF model isn't exactly the paragon of virtue, and you're not going to bring her to any sort of ESPN Christmas ball, quite simply. And she just saw herself and she saw this as a way of leveling up without having to work for it. And you're going to get this a lot more these days, especially with athletes. And athletes have to watch their backs so very seriously going forward, and make sure that if they're going to be, if they want any sort of relations with anyone, they you know what, it might as well be with an escort. I'll put it right out there. It might as well be with an escort, a high-priced escort. Get it out of the way, and then so you can concentrate on your work and keep your money in your pocket. But unfortunately, Shannon Sharpe did not learn this crime, and he being of middle age, I think he's 55 right now, he should have known better. Quite simply, he should have known better. But we have this comment from Lana BK, so let me state this. Lana BK says, the comments are wild, saying that he's going for a girl younger than his daughter. Yeah. He's going for a girl younger than his daughter. And quite simply, do you see? Is there commonalities between these two individuals? I think not. That's why I say I agree with the adage of Islam, in the sense that if you're choosing a wife, if you're choosing a woman that you want to be with, you should cut your age in half and divide it by and add 7. So cut your age in half and divide it by 7. So if Shannon Sharpe is 55, he should seek a girl who's I'd say 3. I said 3. I would say 31. No, sorry, I say 38, 39. Let's see. Let's see. 20. Yeah, I'd say 39. Let me see. 53. Let me just think about this here. So let me just do this quick math here. 255. 1. I'd say, what was that? Oh man, that's 1734, 1734. So 17. I'll say 2. 2, 2, 4. 1. Again, does he want a woman who's about 41? Actually, no. I would say 2, 20, 1, 60, 26 plus 7, 34, 35. But does Shannon want a person who's 34, 35? Sorry for that delay, guys. Does Shannon want a person who's 34, 35 years old? I really don't think so. I think he likes them young. But again, I think he should put it in the hands of a matchmaker, quite simply. But even so, I mean, Shannon's in such an unenviable position these days, because now he's seen as a mark, he's seen as a target by most of these ladies, simply because of his stature, simply because of his status, simply because of his bank balance. He wanted to date a woman because of his wage. Well, he got a woman because of his wage, but simply put, this woman just saw him as a mark, as a way to get pregnant and earn instant money. And due to the fact that there was no future in that, here we are. I really do believe that here we are. But again, these allegations must be taken as seriously as possible by a court of law. And Shannon's already tried to put $10 million in her hand, allegedly. But yeah, here we are. Let's continue.
All role playing, right? The idea of what he said on that, or allegedly said on that audio tape, is another example of role playing, and that she agreed to all of it, and they're trying to gray up a lot of this. And it's interesting because, and we'll get into this a little bit later, about the idea that he potentially offered her a $10 million settlement before she filed. Now, some people would say, if you offer that settlement, you're hiding something, right? You're guilty as sin. The other people say, I don't want this coming out. This is embarrassing for me. I mean, this is my personal, private, intimate life. I don't want any of this coming out. $10 million? What does that say to you?
I have some strong thoughts there, and this is where I was kind of getting to, so I'm happy you took us there. It's just mixed signals, right? You can't have a statement that basically dares someone to release the video. Release the full video, not the unedited. Release everything. We want this to be out there for everyone to see. We want it to be litigated above board. Let's get this all out. And at the same time say, well, I want to pay $10 million. And again, that's an admission from Shannon Sharpe's lawyer. That's not from Tony Busby and the other side. That's Shannon Sharpe's lawyer saying, they're trying to extort us for a lot of money. Yes, we can all agree that's sometimes the playbook, that there's some type of extortion that occurs. I'll put in quotes because it's not really an extortion to have a lawful negotiation back and forth. But to offer $10 million tells you that there's something in the case that they don't want to go out. So I don't know how you offer $10 million, which is not a nuisance level settlement. That's a giant number, right? $10 million, and then say we want everything to come out. We're totally fine with this, the truth being out there. Those two things are not consistent with one another in what is a general legal playbook for litigating things in the media.
Excellent point raised there by the guest here. I forget his name, unfortunately. But an excellent point raised here. It is mixed signals. First, you're saying that this is a shakedown, but then you're offering a woman $10 million. And this is put out there by your own counsel. Doesn't look good in the mind's eye. That means you have something to hide. You have some sort of guilt on your part. However, this could be a play where he does not want any sort of dirt on his name put out there, especially having paymasters such as ESPN on his books. But as he said, it is sending out mixed signals. Are you innocent? Are you guilty of these allegations against you? And again, it's only by the preponderance of the evidence and not beyond a reasonable doubt, since this is a civil matter, as was wanted by Tony Busby and her client Gabrielle Zuniga. So, it's not the most enviable of positions, but again, it's I don't know what sort of play his counsel is raising here, but maybe it's something that to the effect that these sort of allegations, because she is still of sound mind and body, and she is still someone who engaged in a very lengthy consensual relationship with Shannon Sharpe, Gabrielle Zuniga did, that this one denial is worth $10 million. And for her to ask for $50 million is, quite ludicrous and outlandish and, over the top, quite simply. And it needs to, and it is put in the context that $10 million was on the table and she still didn't take that. So are we money hungry or not? So maybe that was a ploy put forth by Shannon Sharpe's counsel. Let's continue.
By the way, what did you make of him showing up to the draft?
I think he's just basically saying, business as usual, right? Like, I'm just going to show up. I was looking this morning to see if he's put podcasts out. Club Shay Shay is still alive and well. It's his own podcast. He's putting it out on YouTube, but I think ESPN, has somewhat distanced himself from the distribution, but he's putting it out there, right? And I think from his perspective, he's saying preponderance of the evidence is on the plaintiff. I can do whatever I'm doing right now. And he, as if this new media world where he has his own independent podcast, Disney/ESPN can't control the distribution of a podcast, right? Like, I have my own podcast, like even God forbid, I lose my job at my law firm, I can still put my podcast out. There's no relation to it. But showing up at the draft with those level of NFL credentials is a different move. And recording a podcast with Chad Johnson, aka Chad Ochocinco, is, I think, another move. Just say business as usual. We're going to keep moving. But the problem, Jesse, and this is to the larger point where I have an issue with what Shannon Sharpe did, there is no onus. You don't have to put all of those text messages out. You don't have to admit that a $10 million offer was made. But once you put those things out, ESPN can, I think, take the position, which Fox Sports did for a period of time in their, I don't want to say similar, but another sexual assault allegation that occurred at work, sexual harassment. Fox Sports took the position, we don't know enough. This is just a complaint. We don't know enough from our side. We're going to conduct an internal investigation. But Shannon Sharpe's side really pressed the accelerator on this case, and they themselves put out a lot of details which I think tend to make Sharpe look worse. So once you put your accelerator on your defense, I think ESPN is certainly free to say there's just too much out in the media from both sides. We have to part ways at this point.
Let me...
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. I think that puts it in full view for all of you to see, quite simply. Listen, the Disney Corporation is as pristine as pristine can be. They are a very safe, a very uncontroversial, and a very family orientated company, and they don't want any sort of sexual scandal or allegations launched against any of their clients whatsoever. They have to be pure as a driven snow, and without any sort of blemishes on their name. And something like this places a lot of blemishes on Shannon Sharpe's name, unfortunately. And so they have to take a step back and say, we don't want the brand to be besmirched by him still being an on-air personality. So we have to take a step back. And such is the description left there by Stephen A. Smith, saying, you know what? If it was up to me, he would still be here. But since it isn't up to me, it's up to Disney, and they are a very woke, a very conscious, a very all-inclusive sort of a family-orientated company. They don't want any scandal as such in their ranks, and so they have asked Stephen A. I think, to step aside, allegedly, and Shannon Sharpe is Stephen A. Smith. Shannon Sharpe to step aside, and Shannon Sharpe has complied. Quite simply, let's continue.
He says he wasn't fired, he stepped away. And let me add to that, because now I want to go to Stephen A. Smith. We talked about Stephen A. Smith. This is Shannon Sharpe's co-host on First Take. We talked about him in a previous sidebar, but there is a lot more comments that he made, and I want to get into it. So this was on Smith's YouTube show, and he said the following. Right, do I believe that Shannon Sharpe is... It's not fair, but, this is not a court of law. This is a business. Does Walt Disney want their host saying these things, or allegedly saying these things in text messages and a phone call? And it makes me wonder, is Stephen A. Smith right? And how on earth could Shannon Sharpe ever come back to ESPN?
So there's one thing, and I'll answer the question, but there's one thing in Stephen A. Smith's statement that I told you that I think is somewhat telling, right? Stephen A. Smith is friends with Shannon Sharpe. They've talked about this. It's very clear and evident from their statement that they're friends. Stephen A. Smith, in the statement that you read, I'm happy we got it out there, right? They didn't need definitive evidence talking about ESPN once all the things Shannon Sharpe's lawyer put out there. So Stephen A. Smith is pointing the finger at the lawyer. And then later on, I think in that episode, I believe Stephen A. Smith said that Lanny Davis, while not referring to him directly, seemingly as we're talking about him, said he was, quote, not being impressive in this at all. So Stephen A. Smith seems to blame the lawyer's comments for taking this to the next level. So, that's, and Jesse and I'll toot our own horn a little bit. If a client called us and said, how do we deal with this? You and I, having some sensitivity for the media, would say, listen, there is a way to litigate this through the media, putting this all up, but you're definitely jeopardizing your status at Disney, right? This is not Fox Sports, right? This is Disney, which is Mickey Mouse, right? PG-13. I don't think you can get away with having those consensual texts, which definitely rise to a level of provocative nature, even if they're between consenting adults. So do I think Shannon Sharpe can move on from this in his career? Yes, I do, because he has his own independent platform, which, I think at one point had a $400 million valuation. They were talking about the Shannon Sharpe Podcast Network. He brings on a ton of guests. So do I think he'll have a career? Yes. Do I think he'll have a career at Disney? that's a very different story. And Shannon Sharpe is admitting to these acts, which again might not be illegal, right? And I'm talking about the acts between the text messaging consenting adults, but the optics of that are really bad, right? And it doesn't have to be a crime that was committed by Shannon Sharpe, but he's admitting to the nature of the text. And Jesse, you read them about dog collars and whatever else. And if Disney doesn't want to have that on their brand, they don't have to. So I'm not sure that Shannon Sharpe ever appears on ESPN again. Certainly he could have a lucrative career working for any number of other football networks, but that's the nature of the beast. If you were Shannon Sharpe's side, you've put your finger on the pulse. You want to put all of this out in the media, and there are ramifications to doing that. So, I just hope Shannon Sharpe was advised of that properly. But from Stephen A. Smith's perspective, he's pointing a finger at the lawyer, which you never want to be the subject of the story.
It's an interesting.
So again, very good point raised there by counsel, and that it's. I want to get his name. I really want to get his name. Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. I really want to get his name here, and here we go. I really want to get his name here, so let me just go back for a second and let me do that.
But before we do that, I want to bring on Dan Lust,
Dan Lust, thank you very much. Dan Lust. Okay, let's go with 6047. Okay, we'll go 6044. So yes, Dan Lust, he raises the issue that indeed, even though you want to litigate this in public and get public opinion, the fact of the matter is ESPN/Disney are watching. And for the fact that you have had these sort of sexual relations put out in public where there is role play, there is and these salacious text messages have been released. Disney's still seeing that, and if Disney's seeing you as an on-air personality with these sort of ideas and machinations, and they've been able to get out in public, then you, as Mr. Lust was saying, as Counsel Lust was saying, you can't necessarily go forward as an employee of Disney. You can't be an on-air personality of Disney because Disney wants personalities who are pure as a driven snow, who don't have any such recriminations against them, don't have any of these sort of actions against them. Know of their on-air personalities seeking out OnlyFans models to develop relations with. So these sort of relations with. So it is, it's going to be very difficult for Shannon to get back as an on-air personality with ESPN. Maybe Stephen A. can help them out in this matter, but it's going to be very, very difficult because the optics of this, especially in the eyes of of feminists and women out there at large, is not going to be a good look, unfortunately. And despite the fact that these are consenting adults, the woke / all-inclusive / very conservative company that is Disney is not going to like that overall. And, there is indeed a good chance that Stephen A. Smith may not be an on-air personality with ESPN going forward. Let's continue.
Which you never want to be the subject of the story.
It's an interesting point. You hope that they're on the same page moving forward, but I hear you. It's a good point. Okay, I want your reaction to this. So there's another statement. This is a new statement from Shannon Sharpe's litigation counsel, Mitchell Schuster. So one of the things that he addressed is why Sharpe would be willing to pay $10 million, this settlement, to Jane Doe before she filed the suit, saying when she learned that he would not father a child with her, she resorted to extortion. While Shannon was willing to pay her a substantial amount of money to avoid the intimate details of his personal life from being exposed, as many high-profile individuals often do when they're being threatened. Dan, first, let me start there. Thoughts on that?
I think it's funny that another lawyer is now giving statements trying to do some CYA for the first lawyer. That's my perspective. But
that's fair.
I'm just a different lawyer. Usually you don't have two different lawyers within 72 hours giving statements in the case. Someone takes the reins. So I think our friend Stephen A. Smith gave us some hints here. But yes, Yeah, statement's interesting, but yes, keep going. All good.
Okay, so there's another part where Schuster also explained that Sharpe intends to pursue claims against, meaning Jane Doe, and all who have assisted her with the dissemination of her fabricated story. And this is interesting, right? Does that mean he's going to file a lawsuit for defamation against her? Because I don't know how that works. There's a litigation privilege, right? Somebody can file. Every lawsuit, the other side's going to say is not true. It's all lies. You can't just turn around and file a defamation lawsuit. You have to have the ability to present your claims. What could he sue for?
It's not that different. And I think Shannon Sharpe referenced this in his Instagram post probably at some point last week. But he said Tony Busby is the same lawyer that went after, Jay-Z. And that lawsuit was later dropped. And I think, if memory serves, I believe Jay-Z is going after Tony Busby, the lawyer behind that case, for putting that case out. The underlying case was dropped. But I believe Jay-Z is pursuing defamation case against Tony Busby in connection with that.
And extortion. Extortion, too. Yeah.
Extortion, right. So it depends again what state we're based in. But if you wanted to tell me, not defamation, right? But if a video is doctored, right, you're not really necessarily protected by the judicial privilege if you were manufacturing and faking a video, which seemingly was the allegation from Sharpe's side. So, you could always defend it and say litigation privilege. We filed this lawsuit ahead of time. We're certainly protected, but it's not going to stop someone from suing and maybe applying the same pressure tactics that Shannon Sharpe's side was accusing Tony Busby of in the first sense, right? You might have some exposure, and maybe your malpractice carrier has some money they want to pony up instead of litigating the case in the court system. So you certainly could do that, but it's not the first and certainly won't be the last defendant to fire back and say these claims are defamatory. I'm being extorted, and I'm going to sue you, right? And maybe not via a counterclaim, but via a separate action. That's certainly possible.
Excellent point raised there by the lawyer. Yes, indeed. Do look for a defamation lawsuit on the part of Shannon Sharpe against Gabrielle Zuniga and Tony Busby, her counsel, simply because you defamed his character. You may have canceled his chance at ever serving at ESPN ever again, and this can be considered, extortion. Quite simply because you're threatening to obtain $50 million, or they're going to release these sort of R-word allegations against Shannon Sharpe and basically defame his career altogether, simply because they did not receive $50 million. So that could be seen as extortion, and as a result, an action can be held against Gabrielle Zuniga. So look towards that. That may be a future action going forward. But despite the fact that these two lawyers are these two lawyers are three lawyers now that we see that there's a litigation lawyer, there is Shannon's personal lawyer on these allegations, and also Tony Busby involved. So look to see more even though there is a toing and froing and there are allegations being launched left and right with text messages being released as well to win the court of public opinion. This action can move towards not only a lawsuit against Shannon Sharpe, but a defamation and extortion lawsuit against Tony Busby and Gabrielle Zuniga, a la the Jay-Z lawsuit, which is still in the courts today. Let's continue.
And we have just a couple of that. Marcellus Wiley, also a former NFL player, reacted to this lawsuit Sunday during an episode of Dat Dude TV on YouTube, saying his, quote, spidey senses were tingling when he heard about the filing. He said, something just ain't right with the timing of the settlement offer, the allegations, and even the temporary leave of absence. Either Shannon got played, or you and me, are getting played as well. Did she know that deal was happening, or she didn't know? Because on Friday it was reported, and on Sunday she filed. What happened between Friday and Sunday? Dan, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think what Marcellus is alluding to, there had been some reports of a very lucrative deal that Shannon's podcast network was being acquired. I think the number was, again, floated around $400 million. So if you're asking me why $10 million was offered, right, and obviously you and I are joking about Mitchell Schuster's second statement seeming to try to explain why Davis was talking about the $10 million off in the first place. If you stand to make $400 million certainly $10 million is a drop in the bucket with respect to $400 million. And if you could pay 10 and then you net out 390, maybe you pay 10. Maybe that makes sense. That's the type of cost benefit settlement that we talk about. I'm not aware that we were that close to a statute of limitations, and I could be wrong. But filing on a Sunday is somewhat odd. Filing on a Sunday tells you want to get the media for that entire week. And let's not kid ourselves. Last week was the NFL draft. It's the middle of the NFL offseason. Usually if you file on a Sunday during the NFL season, people are talking about football. They're talking about Sunday night football. They're talking about Monday night football. This is the dead time with respect to NFL media. So when you file on Sunday and there's no football activities until the draft on Thursday, you're winning the war in the headlines for those days. So I think Marcellus is probably right that there is some gamesmanship there. And I do think this was related to the impending deal that Shannon was about to sign. Now, I had the thought.
So, again, thank you to Mr. Luss for answering that question in the sense that, yes, there may have been negotiations behind the scenes with Gabrielle, counsel, and Shannon Sharpe and his counsel in terms of, having, giving Ms. Zuniga, some hush money of $10 million in order to keep this allegation quiet. That did not. That was not. To the liking of Mr. Busby, and so they launched this action on a Sunday night, which is, I think they're trying to get ahead, as stated, get ahead of the NFL season, especially. It was at that time it was draft season. So again, for this to get out there during draft season, while people's attention is on the NFL, is a bit of a strategic move by Tony Busby on this in this action, and we'll see if it works out. But again, you've had the point and counterpoint, and things have moved on from there. But let's finish this interview with Dan Lust.
Thought, Jesse, this morning, do we think Tony Busby is happy that Shannon Sharpe put his foot on the accelerator and sped up this case in the court of public opinion by releasing those texts? The answer to that is probably no, because there's less that Tony Busby can now leverage Sharpe with, because now Sharpe seemingly is, I guess, a temporary free agent, whatever you want to call it, or he's temporarily off the air, whatever they're phrasing it as. There's not that much more leverage that Busby could do, because every day he could say, listen, they'll take you off the air tomorrow if I put this out. They'll take you off the air the next day. And that leverage is now gone. It's not to say that the case is going to be any different, but I'm sure Busby was licking his chops at the ability to threaten the release of this video over time. But now he doesn't have that anymore. There's seemingly less bolts in the trigger.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's just been like a week, because it really feels like we accelerated and we heard so much. I want one final point. So Sharpe's attorney, again, Mr. Schuster, addressed something else in Jane Doe's lawsuit. So in Jane Doe's lawsuit, there was a reference to another lawsuit filed against Shannon Sharpe by a woman named Michelle Evans back in 2023, and it's still ongoing. She's suing for a variety of claims, including defamation, for Shannon Sharpe allegedly sexually assaulting her. And in fact, there was a reiteration of one of the same allegations as Jane Doe in this current lawsuit. For example, Evans' lawsuit claimed that Sharpe told her during a sexual assault that he would, quote, make it so no other man would want me. And in fact, in Jane Doe's lawsuit, it reads, Sharpe would repeatedly tell Doe that he wanted to do things to her that would make no other man want her. Okay, so take it that way you will. But according to a sworn affidavit from Shannon Sharpe, he denies the allegations from Michelle Evans that she laid out against him, says it was actually Evans who manipulated and threatened him, says that she was harassing him via text messages and phone calls. Well, again, his attorney, Mr. Schuster, has made a comment on that too. Quote, this is exactly what is happening to Shannon Sharpe, and the resurrection of the case involving Michelle Evans is a perfect example. Sadly, Miss Evans became obsessed with Shannon and decided to manufacture a claim against him. When she could not find a lawyer to pursue her outrageous story, she filed a civil complaint on her own that is completely devoid of merit, and basically that's because we believe she's representing herself. Quote, bottom line, Shannon has done nothing wrong and intends to fight back against these malicious lies, not with manufactured defenses or imaginary stories, but with documentary proof and real evidence. So Dan, we have a situation here where now you have two separate claims, right? And some would say strength and evidence, right? It's coming together against Shannon Sharpe. Or he's on the defensive and says, this is just another example. It keeps happening to me and I'm innocent. What do you take away from the inclusion of Michelle Evans here?
See, this is why I'm happy you brought me on the show. I mean, I spent probably 2 years, I was going to say litigating, but covering this case as if I was litigating myself, the Deshaun Watson case where Tony Busby was the plaintiff's lawyer. So there were, I think about 26 civil complaints that were filed. And you and I as the lawyers, I'm like, okay, I understand what's happening here, and we'll break it down for the viewers, right? Tony Busby represented essentially I think 25 of 26 plaintiffs in that case. So a lot of non-lawyers would look and say, wow, these complaints have so much in common. It's basically the same exact thing. There's this common nucleus. It's this pattern. And all these women, some are from different states, from different employers. How are these complaints so similar? And I teach at New York Law School. I do these kind of conversations a lot. And I said, well, same firm. You're basically being asked to draft the same complaint over and over. So a lot of cut and paste jobs that are happening here. So I just want to point that out as a decision point in Tony Busby's history. We've had it, and again, I don't blame Tony Busby. There's nothing wrong with copying and pasting a lot of the same versions of the complaint and putting it out. But the outside public viewed that as being a pattern. Now, does it make sense for Tony Busby to look at other allegations that are out in the public realm against Shannon Sharpe that may or may not be out there, right? You're doing your research. Maybe it's not public. Maybe you're kind of going through the grapevines. You're talking to people in and around the space. It's possible, right? Just think about it practically. If an ex-girlfriend will know about the history of people that Shannon Sharpe has been with, maybe they've had these conversations. So I don't view it as being definitive one way or the other, put it that way. I don't view it as being a pattern. I am someone that really staunchly believes the plaintiff has the preponderance of the evidence. They have to prove their case. So I do think, yes, it's interesting. But again, in the sports and entertainment realm, this happens a lot, right? We could talk about Deshaun Watson, right? 5 people came forward and all of a sudden we had 26. That, to me, as a human being that speaks common sense, that's probably not the best sign if you're Deshaun Watson, but it happens a lot. Justin Tucker, the kicker for the Baltimore Ravens, it happened with Trevor Bauer, even P. Diddy, it's happening with. So other people to come out after the fact doesn't always show a pattern, right? These could be 10, 15 years apart from one another, maybe just different things happening at the same time. Jesse, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out, right? We're talking about a football case, a sports media case. I still think it is very telling, and I mean this sincerely. I'm not intending to joke about it. Mitchell Schuster has now taken over control as the public narrative and the public face of the media side of Shannon Sharpe's defense. That's almost unheard of for one lawyer, Lanny Davis, a high-profile lawyer who was very involved in some political lawsuits. People can feel free to look that up, but another lawyer has superseded control, and you have Stephen A. Smith basically blaming the first lawyer for why his friend might be getting in trouble from ESPN. Obviously, we know what happens. So I would read very closely the difference between these two statements. And I do think it's just not something I would have done. And again, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Every lawyer has different strategies. But putting out a $10 million offer was made looks really bad in the court of public opinion. If you have nothing to hide, release the video. We have nothing to hide, but we'll also pay you $10 million. I can make sense of it from a cost-benefit perspective.
Sure.
And I can also make sense of Tony Busby saying it, right, and breaching the confidences of a settlement conversation. Again, not that it's okay, but I understand it.
For him too, yeah.
Really don't understand Sharpe's side doing it, and I really do think that's the reason he's not at ESPN right now.
And both in the discussion we had today and the discussion I did in
So again, we're going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for sidebar, but you can see that I think in terms of this action, there is a I think it's point awarded to Gabriel Zuniga and to Tony Busby in this action, because quite simply for them to, let me just get back to the main camera here, for them to elicit such a response from Shannon Sharpe, and to get this and to have them publish the fact that they had a $10 million settlement settlement available, and they chose to not take it. It speaks. It shows that Shannon may or may not be involved in any doublespeak, and quite simply, if you are totally innocent, why offer $10 million? But not only that, for you to issue all these different relations with Gabriel Zuniga available, it also hurts your chances in terms of getting a job with Disney. And this is where we stand right now, ladies and gentlemen. So, quite simply, what do we have? Where do we stand in things? Shannon Sharpe he's always going to, I think Shannon Sharpe is not exactly hurting for money. I really think that Shannon Sharpe is indeed going to continue to work on his own platforms that are Nightcap and Club Shay Shay, of which he has 1 million subscribers. So money's going to still keep rolling in. The problem is indeed that this is going to affect his time on ESPN. It's not a good look for him to release his exploits for all to see via text message for the world and ESPN/Disney watching, because again, with Disney having a pristine, pure, conservative family type of business, type of corporation, they don't exactly want to be involved with people who has these sort of scandals, and so his chances of getting back on air with Disney and First Take are slim, very I would say slim, as pointed out by Jesse Weber and Dan Lusk there on Law and Crime. However, let's write that now. Dan Lusk. So what we have here, Jesse Weber. So what we have here is again. It is both a scandal and a shakedown. We all know that. In my synopsis of this matter till now, we all know that, as was seen by the text messages, that Gabriel Zuniga was in it for the money. Quite simply, there was no love there was no love between the two parties. It was just a sexual a relationship of relations. And quite simply, we were dealing with a lady and a gentleman who were, had a consensual relationship, had a very consensual relationship up until late last year. This year was when I thought that things were on the wane in their relationship. Allegedly, things were on the wane in their relationship, and with that, she would have left with absolutely nothing. So she took it upon herself to say, "Hey, let me see if I can twist the story here. Let me see if I can change the narrative here, where I'm going against what was going on beforehand, when I wanted him to be my baby's father, and wanted him to be my husband, and wanted him to pay $25K per cheek, and turn it around and say, you know what, I'm the victim here. There is a power dynamic here. I am just a lonely OnlyFans girl, and you being an all-powerful man, sports media magnate that is Shannon Sharpe." And so, that's where she launched the rape allegations, and here we are today, and here we have the toing and froing. So it's both a shakedown and a scandal here. I think she saw a mark. She took it. I think Shannon should have known better, quite simply, and done his due diligence, or maybe taken his urges to a professional, if you know what I mean. Taking it to a professional and have them deal with said urges and make it quick and clean. Because if you're bringing this to a person who is an OF girl, who quite simply sees you as a mark, who quite simply sees you as this, this sports personality of high regard, they basically you were on the setup. You were definitely you were a lick, you were a mark, and quite simply the con was on, and it was only a matter of time. So Shannon is again an old fool, thinking that his money could buy him anything, but what it did buy him really is a whole lot of trouble. And it is hope that he can. I think he can get through this. I think it is hope that parties can come to terms on a settlement here. And I think Shannon may have to pay dearly on this action. But again, let's see how this plays out. Let's see how this continues. And we'll be following this on Talk Talk Live going forward. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live. That catches you up on the Shannon Sharpe scandal and shakedown. Shakedown and scandal. It is both, quite simply. We're gonna let this play. We're gonna watch this play out with bated breath and see what happens next, because this is something that teaches men a whole lot of things, ladies and gentlemen, and that is once you reach. I think for men, you have to realize that once you reach a certain level of status, once you reach a certain level of notoriety and a certain level of success, you are a mark more often than that, more often than not. And women aren't in it for love; they are in it for themselves. And it is up to you to protect yourself at all times and to protect your financial interests at all times, and your relational interests at all times. And it behooves you to seek professional help, if you know what I mean, in those circumstances, and be a little more self-aware as to who you bring into your life, because quite simply, to allow for this to happen, I think is foolhardy on the part of Shannon. But again, there's no fool like an old fool, and it is hoped that Shannon can weed his way through these sort of proceedings, and get himself back on platforms such as First Take, because I think he's a great personality. I think he's great for the sports business. However, he has to realize that he's a target just like anybody else, with the sort of large S that he has. And thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live. We'll be having another show tomorrow, so do look out for that. And we're going to sign off right here as it is 11:30. I'm going to watch the second half of this Timberwolves-Lakers game. It looks very good for the moment. I just watched the halftime show here with the best in the business, the inside the NBA boys of Ernie Johnson, Kenneth Jet Smith, Charles Barkley, and Shaquille O'Neal. So let me just get back to that. But thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on IG, YouTube. I hope that brings you a bit of insight as to what's going on in the Shannon Sharpe case. There will be a Shannon Sharpe, Talk moment, and I'll just give you my opinion on things as I've just done in a short and sweet synopsis, and that will be forthcoming very, very shortly. So thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live on IG, YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And we're going to sign off. And good night from Toronto on IG. And thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live. We'll be back tomorrow night on